The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face went from red with anger to pale with confusion as the crisp, professional voice of Jennifer Martinez from Forbes magazine filled the upscale Italian restaurant. "Ms. Alexandra Bennett? This is Jennifer Martinez from Forbes. I'm calling to confirm the details for your cover story in our upcoming 30 Under 30 issue. Your company Quantum Dynamics has been selected as our featured tech disruptor of the year." I watched as my entire family, dad, mom, my older brother Michael and his wife Sarah, sat frozen, their mouths literally hanging open. The other diners who had been staring at our table just moments before were now leaning in, clearly recognizing the Forbes name. "Yes, Jennifer, this is Alexandra," I said calmly, keeping my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions swirling inside me. "Thank you for calling. We're incredibly excited about featuring your AI-driven logistics platform. The preliminary numbers show Quantum Dynamics is valued at $2.8 billion, making you one of the youngest female tech CEOs to reach this milestone. We'd like to schedule the photo shoot for next Tuesday at your headquarters in downtown Seattle." My father's wine glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the marble floor. The sound echoed through the restaurant, but I barely flinched. I'd been preparing for this moment for 3 years. "That works perfectly, Jennifer. Should we plan for the usual 2-hour session?" "Actually, given the scope of this story, we're allocating 4 hours. This will be our December cover story. The article will detail how you built a billion-dollar company while maintaining complete anonymity, working under the radar while traditional logistics companies like Harrison Transport struggled to adapt." I glanced at Michael, whose face had gone completely white. Harrison Transport was the family business he'd been bragging about running all evening, the same company that had been hemorrhaging clients to my unknown competitor for the past 18 months. "I understand," I said, still maintaining that calm tone that had always irritated my family. "I'll have my assistant coordinate with your team. One more thing, Alexandra. The article will also cover your philanthropic work through the Bennett Foundation. The $50 million donation to establish STEM scholarships for underprivileged students is exactly the kind of story our readers love." Dad's chair scraped against the floor as he abruptly stood up, his hands shaking. The Bennett Foundation bore our family name, but they'd never connected it to me. Why would they? I was just the family disappointment who worked in computers and lived in a modest apartment. "Thank you, Jennifer. I look forward to Tuesday. Congratulations again, Alexandra. You're truly changing the industry." I ended the call and calmly placed my phone face down on the white tablecloth. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Mom spoke in a whisper. "Alexandra, what was that? Let me take you back to how this dinner started. 2 hours earlier, I'd arrived at Bella Vista, our family's traditional monthly dinner spot, wearing my usual simple black dress and carrying my worn leather messenger bag. I'd driven my 15-year-old Honda Civic and parked it next to Dad's gleaming BMW and Michael's brand-new Mercedes. The hostess had greeted me with barely concealed disdain, clearly assuming I was lost or in the wrong restaurant. "Miss, I think you might be looking for the casual dining section downstairs? Bennett party table for 5, I'd replied quietly. Her expression had shifted to confusion, then reluctant acceptance as she led me to the private dining room where my family was already seated, looking like they belonged in a luxury lifestyle magazine. Dad had looked up from his conversation with Michael about quarterly profits and shaken his head with visible disappointment. "Alexandra, couldn't you have made an effort? This is a respectable establishment." "I'm wearing a dress, Dad." "That dress probably cost less than what I spend on dry cleaning," Michael had chimed in, adjusting his $300 tie. "Sarah, didn't you offer to take her shopping?" Sarah had smiled awkwardly. "I did mention that sale at Nordstrom. I appreciate the offer, but I'm comfortable with my wardrobe," I'd said, taking my seat. Mom had sighed deeply. "Sweetheart, we just worry about you. Living in that tiny apartment, driving that old car, working at... What is it you do again?" "I work in logistics and technology consulting." "Right, computers," Dad had said dismissively, the same way he'd been saying it for 3 years. "But when are you going to get a real job? Something stable?" Michael was running 3 departments at Harrison Transport by the time he was your age. That's when the interrogation had really begun. For the next hour and a half, they'd systematically dissected every aspect of my life, comparing me unfavorably to Michael at every turn. "Michael's buying Sarah a new house in Bellevue," Mom had announced proudly. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a 3-car garage. "What does your place have, dear?" "1 bedroom. It suits my needs." But don't you want more? Sarah had asked gently. Don't you want to build something? Have a family? Michael and I are already talking about kids. I am building something. My work is very fulfilling. Michael had laughed then, the same condescending laugh that had haunted family dinners for years. Playing with computers isn't building anything, Alexandra. I'm talking about real assets, real wealth, real success that people can see and respect. Your brother closed a $2 million deal last month, Dad had added proudly. That's what success looks like. Not sitting in some cubicle somewhere troubleshooting other people's technical problems. I don't work in a cubicle, Dad. Whatever. The point is you're 32 years old and you have nothing to show for it. No house, no husband, no real career progression. When I was your age, I'd already built Harrison Transport into a regional powerhouse. That's when the evening had taken its sharpest turn. Michael, emboldened by Dad's support and probably the 3 glasses of wine he'd consumed, had decided to deliver what he clearly thought would be a wake-up call. Alexandra, we love you, but someone needs to tell you the truth. You're living in a fantasy world. This consulting thing you're doing, it's not a real business. You're basically a freelancer with delusions of grandeur. Michael, Sarah had warned quietly. No, she needs to hear this. Look around this restaurant, Alexandra. Look at how people live when they're actually successful. Look at Dad's watch, my suit, Mom's jewelry. That's what achievement looks like. Not whatever it is you're doing. Dad had nodded approvingly. Your brother's right. You're intelligent, Alexandra. You could do something meaningful with your life if you stopped wasting time on these computer games and got serious about your future. I am serious about my future. Then prove it, Michael had challenged. Show us one thing. One concrete achievement. One reason we should take your career seriously. That's when Dad had stood up, his voice carrying across the restaurant as he delivered his devastating verdict. You'll never amount to anything. 32 and still a failure. The other diners had turned to stare. I'd felt my cheeks burn with humiliation, the same humiliation I'd felt at dozens of family gatherings over the past 3 years. But this time was different. This time my phone was ringing. Now, sitting in the aftermath of the Forbes call, I watched my family struggle to process what they'd just heard. That was Forbes magazine confirming my cover story, I said simply. Cover story? Michael's voice cracked like he was 13 again. You're going to be on the cover of Forbes? The December issue, apparently. Dad slowly sank back into his chair, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been fear. You said, Quantum Dynamics. That's the company that's been destroying Harrison Transport's market share? Is that? That would be my company. Sarah, who had been completely silent until now, suddenly gasped. Wait, Bennett Foundation. The one that donated $50 million last month. That's you. I nodded. Among other things. The waiter approached hesitantly, probably to clean up Dad's broken wine glass, but Dad waved him away with a sharp gesture. His eyes never left my face. This isn't possible, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You work at some tech support job. You drive a 15-year-old Honda. You live in that tiny apartment downtown. I do live downtown, I confirmed. It's actually the penthouse of the building I own, but it suits my needs. And yes, I drive a 2009 Honda Civic. It's reliable and I prefer not to draw attention to myself. Michael leaned forward, his face flushed. You're lying. This is some kind of sick joke. There's no way you built $1 billion company. I've been running businesses since college and I know what it takes. I pulled out my phone again and opened the Quantum Dynamics app. This app currently manages logistics for about 60% of the Pacific Northwest's e-commerce deliveries. We process roughly 2.3 million packages daily. Would you like to see our real-time dashboard? I turned the screen toward them. The numbers were constantly updating: deliveries completed, revenue generated, efficiency metrics. The daily revenue counter was approaching $12 million for today alone. Mom's hands flew to her mouth. Oh my God. Alexandra, this is real. It's real, Mom. Dad shook his head violently. No, this doesn't make sense. When did you? How did you? We would have known. We would have seen signs. I almost laughed. Signs? They'd missed every single one for 3 years straight. Remember when I told you I was starting a small logistics consulting business? You said, and I quote, another one of Alexandra's little computer projects that'll be forgotten in 6 months. The memory hit Dad like a physical blow. I could see it in his eyes. You told me to focus on finding a husband instead of Playing with websites, I continued. Michael said I should just get a job at his company answering phones. But you never said anything about success. You never mentioned investors or employees or... Because every time I tried to share anything about my work, you changed the subject. Every family dinner, every holiday, every phone call. You made it clear that my career wasn't worth discussing unless it looked like Michael's version of success. I opened another app on my phone, showing them the Quantum Dynamics employee portal. We currently employ 3,247 people across 12 states. Our annual revenue last year was $1.2 billion. This year we're projected to hit $2.1 billion. Sarah was frantically typing on her phone. I'm looking up Quantum Dynamics right now. Holy, Alexandra, this website says your company just announced a partnership with Amazon. Last month. We're handling logistics optimization for their entire West Coast distribution network. Michael's face was getting redder by the minute. This is impossible. I've been tracking all the major players in logistics. I would have heard of Quantum Dynamics. You have heard of us, Michael. You just didn't know it was me. Remember last year when Harrison Transport lost the Morrison Industries contract? That was us. The Peterson Group? Westfield Manufacturing? Also us. I paused, watching his expression crumble. Should I continue? You've been deliberately targeting my clients? I've been running my business, Michael. When companies put out requests for proposals, we submit competitive bids. The fact that we consistently win isn't personal, it's professional. I pulled up another screen on my phone, showing a detailed analysis of the logistics industry in our region. Would you like to see why we win those contracts? Before he could answer, I launched into the explanation I tried to give him 18 months ago, when he dismissed my concerns about Harrison Transport's outdated systems. Traditional logistics companies like Harrison Transport operate on legacy systems built in the 1990s. They use manual routing, paper-based tracking, and phone-based customer service. Our AI platform processes thousands of variables in real-time: traffic patterns, weather conditions, delivery windows, vehicle capacity, fuel costs, driver schedules, and optimizes every route dynamically. Michael stared at me blankly. What that means, I continued, is that while Harrison Transport's drivers spend 30 minutes every morning planning their routes with paper maps, our drivers receive optimized routes automatically on their mobile devices. While your customers call and wait on hold to track their packages, our customers get real-time updates via text, email, or app notifications. That's why we're winning contracts, Michael. We deliver packages 40% faster with 60% fewer delays at 25% lower cost than traditional companies. It's not personal. It's just better technology. The fight went out of him completely. You offered to help us implement this technology. 18 months ago. I did. You told me to stick to my little computer games and leave real business to people who understood it. Dad finally found his voice again. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think? Think what, Dad? That I was a failure? Because that's exactly what you've been telling me for the past 3 years. Even tonight, 30 minutes ago, you stood up in this restaurant and announced to everyone that I was a disappointment to the family. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference. Mom was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Sweetheart, we're so sorry. We had no idea. If we had known. If you had known what? You would have treated me differently. You would have been proud of me. I shook my head. The work I was doing didn't change. The impact I was making didn't change. The only thing that would have changed is how you treated me, and that says everything about your priorities. A new voice interrupted our conversation. Excuse me, are you Alexandra Bennett? I turned to see a young man in his 20s standing beside our table, holding his phone. Behind him, several other diners were looking in our direction with recognition dawning on their faces. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just saw the Forbes announcement on Twitter. I'm a computer science student at University of Washington, and your company sponsored my scholarship through the Bennett Foundation. I just wanted to say thank you. Because of you, I'm the first person in my family to go to college. The young man's words hit the table like a bomb. Dad's face went completely white. That's wonderful, I said, standing to shake his hand. What's your name? David Martinez. I'm graduating this spring, and I actually have an interview with Quantum Dynamics next week for a junior developer position. David Martinez. Yes, I remember your application. Top of your class, excellent project portfolio. You built that inventory management system for local food banks, didn't you? His face lit up. You know about that? I personally review every scholarship application that includes a community service project. Your work was impressive. After David returned to his table, I sat back down to face my family. The dynamic had shifted completely. Dad, who had been so loud and authoritative an hour ago, now looked small and uncertain. You're giving scholarships to strangers, Mom said quietly, but we had no idea you could even afford your own rent. I've been giving scholarships for 2 years, Mom. The Bennett Foundation has helped 847 students so far. Would you like to know why I named it after our family name? She nodded, not trusting her voice. Because despite everything, I wanted to honor what Dad taught me about hard work when I was younger. What you taught me about helping others. I thought maybe someday you'd see the foundation's work and feel proud that it carried our name, even if you never connected it to me. Dad's hands were shaking as he reached for his water glass. Alexandra, we've made terrible mistakes. Yes, you have. Michael suddenly looked up from his phone, his face ashen. Alexandra, I'm looking at your company's press releases. You've won contracts with literally every major corporation in the region. Including... He swallowed hard. Including the Peterson Industries expansion project that we were bidding on next month. The $50 million contract? Yes, we won that bid 3 weeks ago. That contract. That was going to save Harrison Transport. Without it, we'll have to declare bankruptcy within 6 months. I studied my brother's face. 3 years ago, he'd laughed when I told him about starting my consulting business. He'd said I should leave the real business to people who understand it. He'd refused my offer to help optimize Harrison Transport's operations, calling my suggestions amateur computer nonsense. Michael, I offered to help you modernize Harrison Transport 2 years ago. You said, and I quote, "We don't need help from someone who doesn't understand real business." I remember, he whispered. I sent you 3 detailed proposals showing how to reduce costs and improve efficiency. You threw them away without reading them. I know. And when you found out that some new company was taking your clients, you never once considered that maybe it was time to innovate instead of just complaining about unfair competition. Sarah grabbed Michael's arm. Honey, maybe Alexandra could still help. Maybe there's a way to work together. I looked at Sarah, who had always been kind to me even when the rest of the family wasn't. She didn't deserve to suffer because of Michael's pride and stubbornness. There might be a way, I said carefully. But it would require some significant changes. Michael's head snapped up. What kind of changes? Harrison Transport would need to completely modernize its operations. New software systems, new training protocols, new management structure. And it would mean acknowledging that the old way of doing things doesn't work anymore. I can do that. I'll do whatever it takes. I pulled out my phone again and opened a different app, one that Michael had no idea existed. This is Harrison Transport's real-time performance metrics. I've been tracking your company's efficiency for the past year. Michael stared at the screen in shock. How do you have access to our internal data? Because your systems are so outdated that they're basically public. Any decent programmer could access this information. It's one of the reasons you're losing contracts. Your data security is non-existent. I showed him the numbers: delivery delays, customer complaints, cost overruns, route inefficiencies. It was even worse than I'd thought. Michael, your company is operating at about 30% efficiency compared to industry standards. Your average delivery time is 2.3 days when it should be same day or next day. Your customer satisfaction rating is 62% when the industry standard is 94%. Your cost per delivery is $47 when it should be under $20. Dad leaned over to look at the screen. Those numbers, are those accurate? Completely accurate. The only reason Harrison Transport hasn't gone bankrupt already is because you inherited Dad's reputation and have older clients who haven't modernized their own operations yet. But those clients are retiring or being replaced by younger executives who expect modern service levels. What would it take to fix it? Michael asked, his voice barely audible. Complete technological overhaul. New logistics software, real-time tracking systems, automated routing optimization, customer service integration, mobile applications for drivers and customers, data analytics platform, cybersecurity implementation. I paused. Basically, everything I tried to explain to you 3 years ago. How much would that cost? Michael asked. About $2.3 million for the full transformation, plus another $800,000 for staff training and transition costs. Michael's face fell. We don't have that kind of money. That's why we desperately needed the Peterson contract. I was quiet for a long moment, considering my options. These people had hurt me deeply, dismissing my achievements and making me feel worthless for years. But they were still my family. And Sarah didn't deserve to lose her home because of Michael's stubbornness and pride. I have a proposal, I finally said. Quantum Dynamics will acquire Harrison Transport. The purchase price will be $1.2 million, which should cover your current debts and give you a small cushion. Michael, you'll become a regional operations manager, and you'll spend the next 2 years learning modern logistics management under my senior staff. You do that. Michael's voice was barely audible. There are conditions. You'll start at an entry-level management salary, $75,000 per year. If you prove you can adapt, learn, and contribute meaningfully to the modernized operations, you'll have the opportunity to earn back up to 20% ownership in the Harrison Regional Division after 5 years. And if I can't adapt? Then you'll remain an employee with a steady paycheck and benefits, which is more than you'll have if the company goes bankrupt next year. Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Alexandra, that's incredibly generous. I'm not doing it to be generous, Sarah. I'm doing it because the regional logistics network strengthens my overall platform, and because I believe in giving people opportunities to prove themselves. Michael will have to earn every percentage point of that ownership back. Mom was crying harder now. Alexandra, we've been so wrong about everything. So wrong about you. Yes, you have been. Dad cleared his throat, struggling to find words. Is there any way you can forgive us? Any way we can make this right? I looked around the table at these people who had spent 3 years making me feel small and worthless. Part of me wanted to walk away and never look back. But another part of me remembered family dinners when I was younger, when Dad would ask about my school projects with genuine interest, when Mom would brag to her friends about my academic achievements. I don't know, Dad. Trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight. But we can try? Mom asked hopefully. We can try. But it means treating me with respect even when you don't understand what I do. It means not dismissing my achievements just because they don't fit your traditional definition of success. And it means accepting that I built something incredible with no help from any of you, while you were all convinced I was failing. We can do that, Dad said quickly. We want to do that. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and couldn't help but smile. What is it? Sarah asked. My assistant. The Forbes photographer wants to include a family photo for the article. Something about the support system behind successful entrepreneurs. I looked around the table. I was going to decline, but maybe. Yes, Mom said immediately. Yes, absolutely. We'd be honored. Even though an hour ago you were ashamed to have me as a daughter? Dad winced. Alexandra, I will regret those words for the rest of my life. But if you give us a chance, I promise we'll spend every day proving that we're proud of you. I studied his face, looking for any sign of insincerity. What I saw instead was a man who had just realized he'd completely misjudged his own daughter, and who was genuinely devastated by his mistakes. The photo shoot is Tuesday at 2 p.m. at Quantum Dynamics headquarters, I said finally. Dress professionally. And Dad. Yes. When the reporter asks about my childhood and what inspired me to become an entrepreneur, I hope you'll remember that it wasn't your doubt that motivated me. It was your early encouragement, before you decided I wasn't worth your attention anymore. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I remember being so proud when you won the science fair in 8th grade. When you got accepted to MIT with a full scholarship. When you graduated summa cum laude. He paused. I never stopped being proud of you, Alexandra. I got scared when I couldn't understand what you were doing anymore. Instead of asking you to help me understand, I convinced myself it wasn't important. That's going to change? That's already changed. Starting right now. I signaled the waiter for the check. When it arrived, I handed him my black American Express Centurion card, the one that had no preset spending limit and required a $10,000 annual fee. Alexandra, Michael said as we prepared to leave, there's something I need to ask you. What? The night you offered to help Harrison Transport and I laughed at you, did you know then? Did you already know how successful you were going to be? I thought about that night 2 years ago. Quantum Dynamics had already secured its first major contracts, and I was beginning to realize just how big this could become. Michael had been so dismissive, so condescending. I knew I was on to something revolutionary. I knew that what I was offering you could save your company and transform it into an industry leader. But honestly, I was still hoping you'd be proud of me for trying. He closed his eyes. I'm so sorry, Alexandra. I'm sorry for everything. As we walked out of the restaurant, I noticed other diners watching us, some taking pictures with their phones. By tomorrow, someone would probably post about seeing the Forbes cover story subject having dinner with her family. The story would spread on social media. My quiet anonymity was officially over. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't walking out of a family dinner feeling small and worthless. I was walking out as exactly who I'd always been, a successful entrepreneur who had built something incredible. The only difference was that now my family knew it too. My phone rang as we reached the parking lot. Jennifer Martinez from Forbes again. Alexandra, I'm sorry to call so late, but we just received some incredible additional information about quantum dynamics. Apparently, your AI logistics platform has just been selected as the backbone for the new nationwide delivery optimization program. This is much bigger than we initially realized. I looked back at my family, who were all standing by their cars, clearly still processing everything that had happened tonight. How much bigger, Jennifer? We're talking about a potential $50 billion industry transformation over the next 5 years. Your platform will be integrated into logistics networks across all 50 states. Alexandra, you're not just building a successful company. You're revolutionizing how the entire country handles logistics and delivery. This story just became our biggest tech feature of the year. I smiled, thinking about the young woman who had sat in family dinners for 3 years, listening to lectures about failure and disappointment, while secretly building something that would change an entire industry. I'll see you Tuesday, Jennifer. And Jennifer, make sure to emphasize in the article that this technology was developed by someone working alone in a small apartment, using a 15-year-old Honda Civic for transportation, while everyone around her was convinced she was failing. That's exactly the kind of detail that makes these stories compelling. The underdog angle always resonates with our readers. As I drove home to my downtown penthouse in my reliable Honda Civic, I realized that the best part of tonight wasn't proving my family wrong. It wasn't even the satisfaction of revealing my success after years of hiding it. The best part was finally being able to stop pretending to be smaller than I was. Tomorrow, the world would know that Alexandra Bennett wasn't just another tech entrepreneur. I was the woman who had quietly revolutionized an entire industry while her own family never bothered to ask what she was working on. And now, finally, they wanted to listen.